We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
As work began on building the vehicles and the support systems for Apollo, NASA reached the conclusion that an intermediate program was needed, one that bridged the gap between the rather modest Mercury flights and the very complex moon missions of Apollo. Thus was born Gemini, the sometimes forgotten triumph of the manned space program. The Gemini vehicle borrowed in some respects from the Mercury capsule that preceded it, but it was a giant step forward, as was the whole program. For one thing, Gemini got its name from the twin stars of Castor and Pollux, the third constellation in the zodiac. Gemini was a two-man program. It moved at a remarkable pace. In just a little over a year and a half, NASA would successfully launch 10 manned missions, one about every 59 days. If there was a gap between the U.S. and Soviet programs at the beginning of Gemini in March 1965, that gap was largely gone by the end of Gemini in November 1966. After a shakedown flight of the Gemini 3 spacecraft by Gus Grissom and John Young in March 1965, the Gemini program got down to the real work. On Gemini 4, astronaut Ed White demonstrated a technique vital to getting to the moon, working outside the spacecraft in the vacuum of space.
Gemini 4, Hawaii, Capcom. We just had word from Houston. We're ready to have you get out whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm separating from the spacecraft. Okay, my feet are out. I think I'm dragging a little bit, so I don't want to fire the gun yet.
For about 21 minutes, Ed White maneuvered outside the Gemini spacecraft 120 miles above the United States in America's first spacewalk.
Gemini 4, get back in.
On Gemini 5, astronauts Gordon Cooper and Pete Conrad demonstrated endurance in space by orbiting the Earth for nearly 8 days. A hybrid mission of Gemini missions 6 and 7 successfully demonstrated orbital rendezvous, a technique that had to take place in lunar orbit if man was to successfully land on the moon. The subsequent Gemini missions would demonstrate docking with another spacecraft moving at over 17,000 miles per hour, extended operations outside the spacecraft, and use of propulsion systems to change orbits in flight. By the time the program ended with Gemini 12 on November 12, 1966, all of the techniques and procedures for going to the moon had been successfully demonstrated in space. America was ready to go to the moon. When you talk to people about going to the moon, it's amazing how few remember Gemini.
Liftoff.
But without the program, we would never have met Kennedy's challenge to get to the moon by the end of the decade. Gemini was the bridge to the moon. For Trinity Mother Francis Health System and Hibbs Hallmark & Company Insurance, I'm Paul Gleiser.